and welcome to the SportsGrad podcast, your bite-sized guide to enter the sports industry. And joining me, as per usual, is Dizzy Gillespie himself, Reuben Williams. How are you, mate?
G'day, Ryan. I'm doing fantastic. Thank you. Way back when, I used to have hair that would replicate Dizzy Gillespie, the long, flowing brown locks. But I've never made a double century in my life until now. So It's been a long journey. We made it to 200 episodes, but it's fantastic to finally be here.
For those just checking in, Dizzy Gillespie, we say that because he once made a 200 against Zimbabwe. He's an Australian cricketer. So whenever someone hits 200, we call it a Dizzy Gillespie. But as he said, 200 episodes. Holy moly.
I know. Pretty wild. I did not think we'd get here when we first started recording.
Yeah. Did you think when we had our microphones strapped to, coffee tables in Torquay when we recorded our first episode that we'd do 200 of them?
I knew we wouldn't do 200 in that scenario. No. I knew things had to change pretty quickly if we wanted to.
Got old.
Yeah.
But no, amazing stuff. I've got a quick stat for you. I did a bit of research during the week. According to ResearchGate, which is an international research company, 56% of podcasts have only 10 episodes or fewer.
Really?
And also 17% of podcasts have 50 episodes or more.
Wow.
So we are in, I guess.
We're in the top 17%.
Yeah, we're in that little tiny percentage.
What about above 100 and then 200?
Well, I didn't get that far. But I'd be pretty confident in saying that a low percentage would have over 100 or even 200.
I would think so too. Anyway, shout out to us for the longevity.
Yeah, absolutely. Ruse, before we get cracking, a shout out to our good friends at Deakin. Being our 200th episode, it is a really great milestone for us, and we could not have done it without Deakin University. Their courses, sports management, sports science, best sports science school in the world. Sports management, their masters is ranked number 1 in Australia. So if you haven't done a university degree or you've just finished studying and looking into postgrad qualifications, jump to Deakin University. We can't recommend it enough. It's your one-stop place to start your sports career.
And the people coming out of Deakin have been the most successful people in our community.
Yep.
So a quick shout out to those people in the SportsGrad community who are out there finding their first full-time job. And we've been able to help our community members land 238 jobs in the sports industry, of which 152 have gone to Deakin students, which is 65%.
Wow.
So they're doing a great job, Deakin. They're pushing them through. We're just giving them the extra ingredients and helping them find great opportunities. So it's been a really good partnership.
A super quality partnership right there. But thank you to Deakin. Alrighty, episode 200. We've been building up to this for a few weeks now. I'm very excited. What have we got planned?
Well, Ryan, in episode 100, we introduced the idea of the 8 principles to get a job in sport without getting lucky. And now another 100 episodes have passed since that time. And over that period, the 8 principles have stood the test of time and proven to still be true. So for today, we've gone back to the 8 principles to remind you of what are the steps you need to take if you want to get a job in sport. And we've got a fresh bunch of examples from the last 100 episodes from our brilliant guests on how they've executed on each of these 8 principles. So without further ado, Ryan, let me jump into number 1 of the 8 steps.
Let's do it.
Number 1, take time to discover why you want to work in sport, because a clear vision is more attractive than a skill set. Now, to set the scene for this one, have a listen to Kimberly Finesse. She is the head of people and culture at Netball Australia, and she explains why it's important to sports organisations that you are connected to a purpose. So here she is.
I think in the sports industry specifically, having a purpose and actually connecting to it is so important. Every company has a purpose. But when you're talking with people who are really passionate about something that they believe in, you can see it in their mannerisms, you can hear it in their voice. And for me, when I'm interviewing a candidate or I'm speaking to a colleague, you and both of you would understand this. Sport's about storytelling, and you'll feel that connection that they have. And sport's about memories. So when you're interviewing someone, the difference between being a really passionate fan or being a really purposeful person who has those memories and has that storytelling, it just shows through in spades. You can see it in their eyes, the tone, the inflection in their voice and their mannerisms, and it just makes for a more joyful conversation.
Beautiful. That's Kimbiz. She's the head of People and Culture in Netball Australia, episode 128, if you want to check her out. But someone who executes this beautifully in their job is our good friend of the show, Tom Scollay, who's living over in Perth. He's the founder of Cricket Mentoring. He features in episode 140 where he shared his startup story about starting his business. And one of the great things about Tom is that the reason why he started his business is because he had this failed, I wouldn't really call it overly failed, but in his mind, he feels like he failed as a professional cricketer. And one of the things that he failed at was getting really good on the mental side of the game. You'll hear him talk about how he could not sleep the night before his biggest match. He was playing at Lord's over in England, and the mental side of his game caused him to slip up. He got dropped, was no longer a professional cricketer. And that was his reason for wanting to give back. So have a listen to Tom and his story for why he wants to work in sport.
I'm trying to be the mentor that I wish I had, because I feel like I had some good coaches, I had some good senior people around me, but if I had a consistent person to talk to and ask questions of, then I feel like I might have performed at my best more consistently, and therefore I might have had a longer professional career. So it's those mental and emotional skills that I wish I knew when I was younger. I'd done a bit of coaching before, especially over in England as an overseas pro. Part of your package is to do some coaching, and I'd never really enjoyed it. And I just went to this session expecting to sort of like get a bit of extra money and whatever. But I got a real buzz out of helping this boy who was pretty good at 13, but I got a real buzz out of helping him get better and suggesting something and him doing it and it working and things. And I thought, wow, that was, and I loved it. Yeah, my sort of, if I'd had a more successful career professionally as a player, I probably wouldn't be running Cricket Mentoring. And I feel like it probably happened for a reason. And there was a podcast where Em Murray, who's a mindfulness coach, she's worked with the Richmond Tigers and with Will Pukowski. She says that we're all on our own journey and things work out the way they're supposed to work out. And she talks about how she was a netballer and she didn't make it, or she wasn't as good as some of the others. And if she'd known then that the reason she probably wasn't going to make it would help her become the mentor that she now is, well, then she would have been sort of more okay with things. And if I'd known when I was 24 that, well, you haven't made as a player, but you're going to become this sort of mentor and coach and help others, well, then things do work out. So I think what you said about, like it's all like part of the journey is absolutely true. And I'm just really passionate about what I do. I'm really passionate about helping others live their best life, and that's through cricket.
Yeah, awesome. That was like such a good quote from Skulls. And I remember that episode. It was just awesome to hear that he kind of recognised that he did have a bit of a shortfall, and he was like, look, I am now committed to helping people improve in a place where I felt that I wasn't quite there. And, in that quote, I know he said, when he started to coach people, he started to just get a complete buzz because he felt like he was helping, almost like he was helping a mini of himself to get to that point where he was like on top of his mental game. So that's sometimes what it takes. Sometimes it might be a downfall, or it might just be stepping into something that you didn't even know you could do, and you end up absolutely loving it because as he mentioned, he kind of got pushed into coaching. He wasn't like actively seeking coaching, opportunities. It just kind of happened. And just from that, he found that he was just getting that buzz, and he went over and beyond what a normal coach would do. He was giving players mental programs to go and, study before they go out to bat, like things like that. It's not just a simple half an hour net session. He took it completely on because he could relate to it so well.
Exactly right. You're right. He's been pushed into it, but then also he's found this beautiful connection with his own experience, which is amazing, and why he's doing such a brilliant job of it. Like you look him up on Instagram and YouTube, his following is phenomenal. Crazy. And he deeply, deeply cares, which is the most important thing.
Yeah.
So for anyone listening to this and you're wondering, how do I find my purpose in sport? Why do I want to work in sport? How do I articulate that? Well, I'm going to throw back to Kimberly to explain this in episode 128.
Think about your memories. Think about the why. I think one of the most important things, and I talk to people throughout the induction process about this, is why do you want to work in sport? Now, it's not for the money. It's not for the accolades. There are some great benefits, and you have some great colleagues. I mean, the people that work in sport, I mean, you got to say, we're pretty okay.
Here we are.
We're okay.
We're here for a reason, you know. So.
Yeah. It's finding that pathway to what your purpose is. And I think a lot of people who come straight out of school, they think they know what that purpose is. And that's going to evolve in the first 2-3 years. And that's completely fine. I say to our Deakin interns when they come in, you know, what do you want to do? Where do you want to be? Do you actually know what you want? And they say, I want to do X, Y, and Z. I go, great, why? And they stop and they have to think about it. Whereas others will say, well, when I was younger, my dad or my friend or my cousin, or, you know, they'll tell you about an experience. And usually your memories and your experience are what create that purpose for you, and they give you that drive.
There you go, Ryan. Just dig into your memories.
Yeah. I still remember that episode, Rose, as well. We spoke about when we were doing induction at cricket, and they almost said to you, like, why do you want to work in cricket? And you had to bring in a photo or something from home that represented what cricket meant to you. And, you know, a lot of people had a whole different bunch of stuff. I know I brought in like a backyard cricket photo of playing with my family and friends and things like that. And that's the kind of stuff you need to look back on. It's like, yeah, that was really special to me. That's why I want to be here.
Absolutely. And that ability to tell that story, why it's important to you, is, you know, a whole paragraph that most people express as passion.
Yeah.
But when you say the word passion, people just completely gloss over you and miss the point.
What does that mean?
Exactly right. Tell the story.
Love it.
So that was point number 1, find out why you want to work in sport. Principle number 2, when you're starting out, acquire easily attainable opportunities at grassroots clubs, charities, and university societies. Now, one of the greatest people that we've ever had in this podcast is Dr. Peter Bruckner, who was the man holding Kathy Freeman's gold medal while she was at her media commitments at the Sydney Olympics after she just ran that famous 400 metres. And unbelievably, it all started in grassroots for Brookie. You have a listen to his story.
Ironically, it was my involvement with Uni Blues that actually gave me my big sort of break in sports medicine. I remember I got a gig. I got invited to accompany the Australian team to the World University Games. So World Student Games had never taken a doctor before. And I got a phone call from the lady who headed Melbourne Uni Sport and said, look, you know, you've been a great contributor to Uni Sport, blah, blah, blah. Would you like to accompany the team? And I thought, wow, that's fantastic. And then she said, the only problem is you've got to pay for yourself. And I thought, oh, Jesus. And, we'd just come back from overseas and just got married, bought a house, had zero money. So I went home, told my wife, and she said, oh, well, it's a pity you can't go. I said, no, hang on a minute. I've got to go. And she rolled her eyes for the, 100,000th time in our relationship. And I just sort of thought, I really couldn't afford to go, to be honest. But, you miss 3 or 4 weeks' work, you don't get paid at all. You actually have to pay your way. But I just thought it was that was my opportunity. You've got to get it. You've got to get an opportunity. When you get that opportunity, you've got to grab it. And to me, that was my opportunity. I had a chance to show what I could do. And from then on, that was the thing that gave me my big break, really. And so indirectly, it was due to my sort of long involvement with a sporting team, having played there and been involved there and so on. So I went off to Edmonton in Canada, the World Student Games, and then met a whole bunch of people there in swimming and athletics, and then got invited to look after the swimming team, the athletic team, and just things went from there. I did 2 more World Student Games in Japan and in Zagreb, and then. Then did the swimming team for a while, then did the aths team, and a whole bunch of things. So it was sort of a bit of luck, but it was also just the fact that I'd put in the hours and volunteered and so on. And I think that's one of the really important things I think in sport more than anything. There's this culture of volunteering, and I did lots of volunteering over time. I'd go down to. I loved athletics, and I used to go down every Thursday night to Interclub at Olympic Park and just sit in the medical room and look after people with a couple of friends who are physios. And everyone thought I was crazy, but I finished up being the Australian athletics team doctor and went to 2 Olympics. So, you sort of you've got to put in the hard yards. You can't just sort of. Nowadays, I get people saying, "Oh, I've been doing sports medicine for a year. It's time I did the Olympics." Well, hang on, mate, it's not quite that easy. So
it's time I did the Olympics. I want to know who's. So there's Brookie. Episode 112, former doctor of the Australian Olympic team, the Socceroos, the Australian cricket team, you name it, he has done it. Liverpool, just to name a small club.
I reckon he's up there with the best resume we've had.
Absolutely.
Some of the clubs and organisations on there, unreal. But I love that from Brookie. He spoke about and just how he went down to his grassroots club. At the time it was University Blues Footy Club. Started volunteering, just spending time in the change rooms, essentially just helping people through their injuries. And he did it for free, obviously, and people thought it was nuts. So it just shows like he got the opportunity at the global games because he just put in the time. People recognised that he was there and he had that thirst and wanted to get there. So put in the time, and he put in an absolute ton of it. And you'll make that impact and make an impression.
And now people are lining up to do their work experience at the University Blues Football Club just to work under Brookie because he's got so much experience.
Yeah.
And people are starting to recognise that grassroots is literally where you've got to start out.
Yeah.
But the best thing is you don't have to put in a resume.
No, just offer your time.
Yeah.
It's pretty simple.
Exactly. All right, principle number 3. Learn to create examples, learn to sell yourself. If you can do both, then you will climb rungs. Now, I'm going to throw back to our friend Kimberly, episode 128, Head of People and Culture at Netball Australia. She talks about why telling your story is a really compelling way to sell yourself. Have a listen to what she's got to say.
What do you look for in a cover letter?
Personality. I think you need to stand out from the crowd, but you need to stand out in a manner that shows that you're bold and courageous, but not arrogant. The flow of this young lady's letter was just beautiful. She connected with all of the things that tug our heartstrings when we work in sport. So she threw that sentence out there from the get-go. And when you're sitting back and you're getting applications and there's over 100 of them, and you read that first line, I refer to your recent advertisement for X, Y, and Z, and they're all exactly the same. And then I've picked up one, and this young girl I could basically hear her tone with her pointing her finger at me going, I'm going to tell you why I'm going to wear the baggy green. And I went, oh, okay. And I thought, that's really arrogant. And then I went through the rest of the letter and I thought, oh, no, she tugged at my heartstrings. So I had an instant connection to her. She talked about her memories, her family, her roots in the community, and she wove that into the values that Cricket Australia had. So she had this beautiful connection piece. So there was no way I was not going to meet her in person. And I think it's a really fine line when you're writing a cover letter to not be an overeager fan, which, no offense against any of our fans, but, you get some letters where it's just all about fandom, which is fantastic. But we also want to know, why do you want to create that fandom? Now, why do you want to be a part of this? Why do you want to be a part of history? Why do you want to create memories for kids of the future? So it's a really fine balance, but it's also putting your personality into it so we have that instant connection.
Right. I love that quote about you need to stand out in a way that shows you are bold and courageous, but not arrogant. And the person that she's talking about, you can see how she's created an instant connection with Kimberly. She's caught her attention. Kimberly's now bought into the story of this person in the cover letter. And when you tell your story, the way you sell yourself is by showing what you do and what you care about rather than telling. and a lot of people enter an interview and they just tell people how good they are.
Yeah.
They say, "Oh, tell us about an example where you've had to work in a team." And they'll say, "Oh, look, I'm a really naturally gifted leader. I work really well with these people." It's like, cool, you're just saying things to me.
I've got really good leadership skills.
Yeah. There's nothing behind that. But when you tell your story, it shows people what you're about. And people are smart enough to draw insights out of that represent your ability. So show rather than tell through storytelling is the main takeaway there. Someone else who is an expert storyteller and connecting with people is Hamish McLaughlin. Now, have a listen to his take on this.
When Roger Federer plays Novak Djokovic, put your hand up if you want Roger Federer to win. When Roger Federer plays Andy Murray, put your hand up if you want Roger Federer to win. Yeah. So it is because he's told his story better and you've emotionally connected with him and you've fallen in love with him over the years, more so than you have Novak or Andy. So it's sort of just common sense that if you can connect with the interviewer and have them emotionally connect with you, the hand goes up when they've got to make a decision whether they're going to employ Ryan or Ruben. I connected with Ryan. I didn't quite connect with Ruben because the CVs are both brilliant. Who am I going with? Human nature says the guy that I connected both with and want to spend more time with.
I love Hamish's example that he's used between Roger and Novak.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people can resonate with that. And when you put that in your mind, it's kind of like, wow, I want to be Roger. I don't want to be Novak.
Yeah,
I want people to connect with me. And when he goes on to talk about the human nature of connecting with people who tell their story, what's actually going on is when people share their story and you listen to it, oxytocin is starting to be released in your brain. And that oxytocin is incredibly important because it allows you to feel empathy, and that empathy is what leads to taking action off the back of it. So there's a bit of neuroscience behind what Hamish is talking about.
I was going to say, he's really brought the science into commentary, hasn't he?
Yeah.
Oxytocin, he knows all the toxins in your body.
100%.
He was amazing.
Yeah.
He was awesome.
Absolutely. Now, someone else who's an expert at selling themselves, and he had to do this to be able to transfer his career from investment banking to the sports industry, is the CEO of Hockey Australia, David Prowse. We spoke to him in episode 171, and just have a listen to how he presented himself to make that jump into his dream job.
It's all well and good to tell someone that, oh, you're good enough and you can do this and that. But even from a hiring perspective, you want to actually see it on paper and someone presenting. So any role, ever since the golf role and the two CEO roles I'm in now, any role that I'm looking at bringing on, I want to see a presentation because I want to see it in practice. Tell me what you're going to do and put it in writing. So,
is that from the coordinator role all the way to your exec team?
Yeah, well, I'll give you an example. So my first job in sport, I didn't come from sport. So I came from investment banking and I missed out on 3 jobs because I didn't have sports experience. I had to do something different because I knew people were just submitting a CV and they had sports experience, so they were getting an interview. I needed to do something that was going to get me an interview because I didn't have sports experience. So I put a presentation together for my first job in sport.
When they didn't ask for it?
No. And it was my transferable skills. I've still got it to this day. I showed a few people. So it was my transferable skills that I could bring from investment banking into a sales role in sport, my contacts, and what I could do in the first 60 days. And I submitted that with my CV. And I come from an aspect now of someone who employs people. If someone's going to do that and go over and above and show me that commitment, I'll give them an interview. Because they know that they desperately want to roll. It's a bit like when people say they're passionate in the first line of a CV, cover letter, sorry. Yeah, everyone's passionate. Or you wouldn't work in sport. But take that out and actually show me your passion in your work.
I absolutely love that from David. I remember when he said it, and I remember your words. He said, but they didn't ask for it. And we just played it there, but I loved it because he knew exactly, he knew to a T, what his skills were and what he needed to show in that interview. And that, I think that's what it takes. Sometimes you just need to know exactly what makes you really stand out to the interviewer. And if that means putting together a presentation, then absolutely go and do it. He's just done that off his own bat.
Yeah.
And look where it's got him. He mentions in there, if someone was to do that to him, he'd automatically give them an interview. Because it's like you've just gone above and beyond and you understand what you can bring to that team.
And his presentation is quite literally proof of his own initiative.
Yeah.
If they were to ask him, hey, David, do you have initiative? And he said, yeah, I've got pretty good initiative. Great.
Yeah.
But he's literally just brought a presentation, which is him saying without saying it, I've got incredible initiative. So well played, David. I think a lot of people can take a lot of inspiration out of that.
Yeah. And even just the stuff on like the first 60 days that I'm in the role, I can do this. And I had this skill in my previous job, I can bring that to this. Like it's just literally just reeling off examples of how he can do the job. So aced it.
Number 4 is invest time mixing socially with the people who are going to hire you. Because if you can thrive here, then you have ticked cultural fit. Now, the man who we think has done this best in the last 100 episodes is Max Abbott. He's the media and communications manager from episode 132, working at the T20 World Cup. Just have a listen to how he's ended up meeting the CEO of the T20 World Cup to get his job.
You know, by being involved at East, so the guy on the committee there ended up getting a job as Hong Kong cricket CEO, which was how I was able to go up there. And then, well, actually, when I was in Hong Kong, I was thinking to myself, I'd love to work on the T20 World Cup. Someone volunteered to help us out with our commercial projects, and that person was Nick Hockley, who came up to help us out. And so I was sort of mentored by him for over the course of 6 months. I had no idea he was going to be T20 World Cup CEO, but when I sort of came back to Australia and saw, you know, he was in that position, I thought, you know, at least there's someone for me to talk to about the role and find out about it. And I obviously still had to go through the whole process, but certainly, you know, it was very helpful, you know, insight to be able to have. So, you know, there's definitely been a few sliding doors moments. So I do consider myself quite fortunate in that regard.
Pretty incredible how just hanging out in cricket circles can lead to the biggest cricket tournament on earth. But I think what's really important in that is Max's ability to have a relationship with the first person involved in that chain, and that was a guy at his cricket club who led to the opportunity in Hong Kong. I know for some people, you know, if you've come from another country, it can be quite daunting to, you know, start to step out into a new culture and find ways to connect and all that. But the easiest way to connect is by building common ground. And sport is probably the most topical thing to find common ground on. And so entering into these grassroots clubs, it, you know, puts you in the space of the people who work in sport, the majority of people who work in sport. Yeah. So if you can thrive there, if you can mix with them socially there, then you're going to get pulled into all sorts of opportunities.
Yeah, 100%. And like, it's just so easy to have a conversation with someone in a grassroots club, right? You've got one thing in common. You're at a club playing a specific sport. So there you go. Start that off well.
Job done.
It's easy.
Number 5, LinkedIn allows you to publish your resume in 1,000 different ways at scale. And most people haven't figured this out yet.
Nope.
There's a great stat, Ryan, that says only 1% of people who have LinkedIn profiles actually post content.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of clear space to build a profile. It's not like Instagram, Facebook, or TikTok where it's crowded and you're competing for attention. There's so much clear air on LinkedIn. And I've previously told the story about how when I was made redundant from Cricket Australia, I used LinkedIn to get 12 job offers in the first month after finishing up there. More recently, LinkedIn led to our company getting investment, which is pretty remarkable.
Yeah. Thanks, LinkedIn.
Yeah, thank you. Here's how it happened. This was taken from episode 169, where we talked about how we turned our podcast into a startup. I met Bennett in around September 2020. He popped up on LinkedIn and sent me a very nice message, which was very cool because I've been following him for a long, long time. And so we kind of chatted for a bit, just bounced ideas because we were just two like-minded people who were, you know, motivated to help people get jobs in sport. And then we began iterating on the membership and we put a post out one day. I remember thinking, if we want to make changes to the membership, then we need to kind of give it a bit of a launch plan. So if we're going to put this post out on Friday and that post out on Monday and then the other one on Tuesday the week before, then it needs to start tomorrow.
Yeah.
This is about 11:30 p.m. at night. So I remember like dragging myself back out to the laptop and like crafting up some post. And I was like, oh, let's just do it.
Yeah.
The next day I woke up. The post didn't really get much traction at all. It was like 25 likes or something. But it did get a message from Shannon Gove, Bennett's cousin, fellow director at Spark Event Group, fellow co-founder of Event Workforce Group. And he just said, hey, really like the look of what you're doing. Went along to the tennis. Never been to Rod Laver before, but then suddenly watching the semi-final between Tsitsipas and Medvedev. And yeah, Shannon was just sitting next to me going, Rubes, we love what you're doing. We just got to do some work together. Why don't you come into our office next week? Rocked up to the office. Shannon then starts saying, like, we love what you're doing. It's excellent. We can see it going quite far, and the same problem exists right around the world. What would it look like if we were to invest in you? There you go, Ryan. I think one of the main things from that is how important it is to tell people what you're working on, because you just never know who might be listening or who might be interested. And I know a lot of people who, would be working on different things to what we're talking about and what we're dealing with every single day. The principle is exactly the same. Everyone's got work examples that they're out there doing. The more that you can share of it, the more people might find use for you somewhere else. But for in our example, like if we were to change the membership or build something new and just send an email out to our members to say, hey, here's a couple of changes going, a lot of it just stays under the hood. The people who are mixing with it know about it and care about it, which is nice, but it's the extra opportunities in the big wide world of LinkedIn where everyone's connected that these amazing things can happen. And I've got no doubt that without LinkedIn, we wouldn't have had that connection to the guys at Spark who essentially helped us get us where we are today. So, incredible platform. If you are going out there just handing in resumes to everybody, just remember that, one resume handed into one person is probably cost you an hour of time. Yep. You can split the same resume into about 10 different posts and get that reaching 10,000 different people. So there's efficient ways to do things.
Absolutely. I love that.
Principle number 6 is get comfortable talking to people you don't know, because opportunities exist in circles of people who trust each other, and you are welcome to join those circles. Now, this example comes from Jason Chan, the Chief Medical Officer of the Melbourne Storm, who we spoke to in episode 195. Have a listen to his case.
And then I happened to be at the MCC Grand Final luncheon some 10 years ago now in any case, and there's 3 of us mates who invite a few friends along. And on this particular luncheon, the football manager for the Melbourne Storm was there, a guy called Frank Panisi. And I eventually met Frank because he was on the opposite side of the table from me. And about 3 hours later and about 12 beers later, we ended up meeting each other and having a bit of a chat. And I found out what he did and he found out what I did. And I didn't know at the time, but they were looking for a new doctor. And I had quite a lot of bravado during that sort of occasion. And he told me the guys that he was... the players in particular that they were getting surgeries for in the post-op season, and I had a reasonable amount of experience in that sort of area, and told him what I thought of said operations and said persons, and I won't go any further. And he said to me, he goes, listen, you seem to know a bit about perhaps what's happening around in Melbourne. And the doctor, to be fair, the doctor they'd had before that time was from England, so he wasn't a local doctor as such. And he said, listen, would you mind catching up for a drink in about in a week's time or a coffee? And I said, sure. And true to his word and to his credit, he gave me that call a week later, and rest is history. Essentially, the club took a punt on me in some respect, and here I am 8 years later,
Fantastic.
Still doing the same job.
So let me go back to that MCC luncheon. Was that an invite, or did you have to buy a ticket? Who do you owe thanks to?
I owe thanks to a mate of mine, Grant Weir, who and there was 3 of us. There's 3 mates who've been together for a good 20 years or so. And for the past sort of 15 years or so, we've taken this table at the long room. It was on the day before the AFL grand final, and we invite 3 or 4 guests each. And this is how it came along. And his guest was Frank Panisi on that particular occasion. So I've got him to thank for probably, or more to commiserate with, whichever way you look at it, really.
Fantastic.
But that's how it happened.
That's incredible. You're kind of building like your own little micro community by just introducing your friends to the people you know. That's worked out extremely well.
I think that's probably how things work in sport, to be fair. It's not necessarily a matter of what you know. It's very, very much a matter of who you know, or where you can otherwise get that leg up one way or another.
I love the Jason Chan story. It's just awesome though. Like, he's gone to this MCG grand final luncheon, does it every year. Like, could see someone there, could not. He just happens to meet a guy who his mate has invited. This happens to invite him. He's from the Melbourne Storm. And he's just willing to have a chat to him and willing to be, just interested in what he's up to. And through that, they've got into the conversation and he's able to have input into it. And it's as simple as that. And literally him just giving his opinion and having his own, obviously he's a smart guy. He's a doctor at the end of the day. He knows what he's talking about. By just sharing his opinion on something that's led to a coffee. And if he could have just said, "Oh yeah, cool, no worries," but he was able to just connect with someone who he didn't even know, and just share an opinion, and that's led to something. So incredible,
brilliant stuff.
The MCG luncheon might be the best networking event you can get to.
I know, gosh, everyone would be lining up to get tickets to that. The AFL
table,
probably 30 grand or something. Who knows?
You might see us there this year.
Yeah, maybe.
Probably not.
If we get an invite from Jason. But second doctor to make a feature in episode 200. So, I would back a doctor to know what they're talking about.
Absolutely. You trust every doctor, don't you?
Yeah, exactly right.
Love it.
Principle number 7, discover your career path by pursuing your genuine curiosity. And I think the most curious man we've ever had on this podcast, without a doubt in my mind, is Jacob Tober from episode 173. And he's the head coach of Core Advantage. And he also runs a little application called VBT Metric, which stands for velocity-based training. So he's doing a bunch of different things. But just have a listen to this clip from Jake and you'll understand why he is excellent at what he does, because he's just obsessed with it. Academically as well, how did you go about your study? We mentioned as a student of the year, you're obviously very smart as well, but that comes with a lot of time and practice. What were you like during university?
I was pretty studious. So I'd go to all the lectures. I wouldn't do them online. I'd take notes. I studied pretty aggressively. Sports science, when I was doing it, I'm not sure how it is now, but it was quite a minimal contact time in terms of hours. So I did go, for every hour I put in a class, I was then doing another hour at home. And at the same time, I was getting practice. So from second year, I was sports training for the Sandy Zebras in the VFL, and I was taping ankles, and I was grilling the physio and asking questions and learning how to massage. And so I was kind of getting my hands dirty at the same time as doing the course. And then I played my own sport as well. So I was practicing what I was learning in class in my own junior basketball coaching, my own sports training at the VFL team, my own basketball, my own gym work. So it's kind of learning and then practicing in a few different environments. So I had a good chance to sort of tweak and, that's an interesting concept. I'll try that with my junior basketballers. That's an interesting training principle. I'll try that in my own, strength workouts or whatever it might be. So I think that combination of self-experimentation along with the theory stuff from Deakin was really valuable.
So it kind of became your entire world. You were learning all these things at university and just applying them everywhere else, which seemed to be a lot of aspects of your life because you're extremely sporty.
Absolutely, yeah, and that's the beautiful thing about doing a career and doing a course that you're really passionate about. It's if you love artwork, then you're going to learn things in an art class, and then you're going to go home and you're going to draw and paint and graphic design and whatever it is. And so for me, it was I'm learning about the body, I'm learning about physiology. The calf works like that. Well, I should be changing how I do my calf raises. I should be doing seated calves for the soleus as well as my standing for the gastroc. Or, foot intrinsic muscles are really interesting. Let's go do some barefoot work. So I was playing with all these ideas and then feeling them, and then that was making it stickier. So that was making the information sticky because it's that applies to 3 sets of 12 or 45-second rest periods or whatever the little thing was. And over the course of 3 years, you accumulate a lot of workouts and a lot of coaching sessions, and they just sort of added up.
Yep. I think that's really interesting and a great example in terms of just how great people become great at what they do. You really have to immerse yourself in it. Because I know a lot, when I was a student, I would see myself and a lot of other students kind of go in, try and learn a few things, and then go back into the rest of my life and just kind of zone out or forget about it. Whereas for the people who come out on top and do very well, it just doesn't stop. And it doesn't stop because you don't want it to stop. You're loving every minute of it, or just about every minute of it.
Yeah.
And it becomes easy to learn and easy to want to learn more, and you become curious and all that sort of thing. So it's just interesting kind of thinking about how do you become how do you get the most out of your degree? Well, you've really just got to
pick the right degree.
Pick the right degree is probably the most essential part of it all.
I couldn't believe the students that would show up for sports science practice, VO2 max tests and rowing erg things, stuff like that, in their jeans and their boots or high heels or whatever it was.
Yeah.
And then you go, do you play sport? No.
Yeah.
What's your degree? Sports science. With management? No, just sports science. Do you play sport? No, I hate sport. It's what are you doing? Go do health science. Go do management. Do something. You don't have to be obsessed with sport to work in the sporting industry. There's lots of, there's marketing, there's sales, there's memberships, there's health stuff, there's psychology, so many things other than, but it's we're doing VO2 max tests, we're doing strength tests, we're running sprints. And he's like, oh, no, I don't do that, sorry. The old PE thing where they show up in the Crocs and, oh, no, I've got a letter from mum, I can't do that class.
Yeah.
It's like, you're paying money for this. You should be immersed in it. Yeah. And I was always the first to throw my hand up. I was like, I want to try everything. Because if I end up down the physiology VO2 max testing, I want to know what the VO2 max test feels like so I can coach through that or give tips to my athletes and things like that, or know what a good score is so that I got a 55. That is amazingly hard. So someone gets a 60, I'm like, you're doing really good. Like, and get a sense for where my soon-to-be clients, members, athletes are going to be based on experience.
Ryan, I absolutely love what Jacob said there at the end about you're paying money for it. You should be immersed in it. And I think success comes in any field from enjoyment of solving the types of problems that you want to solve, because you end up thinking about it all day, every day, and just spending more time in it just helps build that skill. And so it's no surprise to me that Jacob's become excellent in his field, because he's so curious about how everything he was learning worked in the real world. He said all this information that he would apply at his own basketball training just made it stickier in his mind. So he's got an incredible advantage over someone who is just half interested in that space, who doesn't want to apply it in their real world. Which made me really love how much passion he had about people who did sports science but didn't play sport, because I was just kind of looking at a degree that might have sounded cool. And I think a lot of people fall into the bucket of pursuing a degree or a career path that they're kind of interested in, think could be cool, might have been pushed upon them in some cases, and they're not that interested in it. And they don't have that much success in it either, because they're up against the likes of Jacob.
Yeah.
Like, how can you compete against Jacob, who's absolutely obsessed with this stuff?
Yeah.
And there are a number of different examples. Ollie Gilbert, who I'm about to get to as well, is another person who's just obsessed with the type of consulting work he's doing in the strategy space.
Well, you're going about stratosphere then.
Yeah, well, it sends these guys into the stratosphere. Like, they are head and shoulders above their peers because they're so curious about this stuff. So I think the main point of pursue your genuine curiosity is that if you want long-term success, pick the right problem to solve, as in pick the right degree, pick the right first job to go into, because that's what you're going to do best at.
Yeah.
And then finally, principle number 8, invest so much time that it worries you if it's all worth it, because that's how you know you're on track. Ollie Gilbert is the senior strategy consultant at Gemba. He featured in episode 175. Have a listen to the extra work that he's doing outside of his Monday to Friday 9 to 5 job.
My job was working in mergers and acquisitions at Deloitte, but I loved sport. It was, as we talked about, my number one passion. So I knew outside of my day-to-day I wanted to be involved to some extent. And one of my friends at the Melbourne High Footy Club worked at the MCC on weekends, or at the MCG on weekends. And I was like, you know what? It's something a bit different. I get paid to watch footy in an aisle for free 2 or 3 times a week. What a great opportunity and what a great way to spend my weekend. So I'd be working Monday to Friday. We were working based in Melbourne, but working out of Sydney for the best part of 2.5 years. So
this is while you're working full time, not while you're during school or at university.
No, this is while I'm working full time as a grad.
Wow.
So we'd be clocking up some pretty big hours during the week, and then the job that I got was to basically work as a casual aisle person. So showing people to their seats, checking their tickets, letting them know where to sit. So I was doing that for probably 12 months. And then there were times where, you'd get put in a bad part of the MCG. Like, I remember so clearly to this day being behind the Collingwood cheer squad one day when they were getting absolutely pumped, and it was just chaos. Like, people throwing beers everywhere, fights, and I was like,
oh, no.
Is this really how I want to be spending my weekends? All my mates are out there having fun. But randomly I got tapped on the shoulder by a lady who worked for the MCC. So just out of nowhere, she's like, I've been watching you for a while. I really like your demeanour. I'd like you to sort of come up and meet the MCC committee. Met the MCC committee, and they were like, we want you to work for us on match days. So I went literally from being the most junior person at the MCC to probably the most senior person out of 1,000 employees in the space of 5 minutes.
Wow.
Yeah. Wow. So in terms of what my role was at the MCC, I was basically the match day assistant to Stephen Goff, who at the time was the CEO or president of the MCC. and I'd work on the door. If he needed me to run upstairs to the office and get him any fact or figure, it'd be helping out with that sort of stuff. And it just gave me access to the who's who of sport in Melbourne and across Australia, I guess, which that's what gave me, again, going back to your question, that's what gave me the fuel to be like, this is the industry that I want to work in, because, on a match day, you might have the club boards, you might have the AFL exec, you might have people from all around Australia. We had Joe Biden in when I was there, which was pretty cool.
Yeah. Far out.
I was at that game. I remember that.
Yeah. So that was massive. I've never seen a level of security like that before, and obviously that was before he was president. But that sort of gave me access to people within the industry, which all of a sudden I really respected. But I learnt that there's a career in sport for people who really want it.
That was incredible. How long were you at the MCC for?
I was there casually for, I reckon, 2.5 years. And for 1.5 years, it was in that capacity working for the MCC committee.
And there's an incredible amount of time to work 7 days a week on top of the stress of the consulting world.
Yeah. It was... I look back on it and really don't know how I did it. And I remember so clearly... One of the major things where I'm like, okay, something needs to give way was I sat down with my parents one night after a long shift at the MCC, and they're like, you get off a plane, you put your washing in the washing machine, and then you're gone for the weekend, and then we see you for a little bit on Sunday night, and that's it. And they're like, something needs to give. Like, and this was before flexible working. They're like, you can either peel back Deloitte to 4 days a week if you want to continue the MCC, or give up the MCC, and very reluctantly I had to give up the MCC, which felt like going through a breakup, to be honest. I was devastated. I used to sit at games for the couple of weeks and months after, looking up at the MCC committee box, being like, I wonder what's going on up there, instead of watching the footy. But I'm missing it.
And I think you may not feel this because you're so passionate about it and loved being at the MCC every single day, but I think there's a level of humility to be able to step back from the work that you're doing in the consulting world and say, I'm going to give my time to the MCC on the weekend for a much lower pay to watch these people throwing beer around and make sure everyone's safe and having a good time.
Yeah.
And I think that's very comparable to other people who are looking for something else to add to their resume and want to make it in the sports industry. But are unwilling to put their time into a grassroots club or otherwise. But, you're a perfect example of someone who's willing to go that extra mile, find time somewhere, make a lot of sacrifices, and it's worked out extremely well for you. So I don't know if you've ever felt that way, but I think it's a thing that's worth recognising.
Yeah, it's funny you say that. Like, I remember there would be times where I'd be on the train on the way into work being at the MCG, particularly when I was an usher, and I'd always think, what if I run into someone from work, or what if I run into my boss or whatever? And I did a couple of times, and they'd always say to me, on the Monday or the following week, you were so buzzed doing what you were doing. Like, it just seemed like you genuinely loved your work. And it's just a reminder that, sometimes you have to sort of throw prestige or what you think, your self-perception or whatever it might be, to try and forge or follow your dream.
So Ryan, as you can see, Ollie experienced something that eventually had to give. He did this incredible workload for 2.5 years. I don't know how he did it. I felt like I stretched myself in the last 18 months of my degree. I don't know if I could do an extra 12 months on top of that. But for those people who are doing the extra going the extra mile and doing the extra yards like Ollie is, and who might feel close to burning out, who might think, I've invested all this time, I don't know if it's going to be worth it. The reality is that you are constantly building skills and networks with every single day that you spend grinding it out. And I love Ollie's as an example because I think the more that you invest in it, the greater chance you have of someone seeing your value. And in Ollie's case, he stood out amongst the other people at the MCC. Even whilst Collingwood fans were throwing beer across him and all this other sorts of stuff, he didn't have to be there. He had a Monday to Friday job that was keeping him afloat. But all of that led to him getting his dream job. And his dream job is something that, you've got to be in the top 1% of people to do. And to get that, he's done something that only 1% of people are prepared to do. You might have heard me mention in that clip that I think it takes an extraordinary level of humility to actually say, you know what, this isn't beyond me. I might be a consultant at a big, fancy, Big Four company, but I'm willing to go and do some smaller stuff on the weekend in the area that I'm really passionate about because that's where I want to get to. Carlo Kasparian from episode 20 way back when is another perfect example. When he was 29 years old and everyone else is probably like, I'm just settling into my career. I don't need to do anything else different. I don't need to volunteer. He was still going out there and volunteering. And that experience allowed him to step into the general manager role at Football Australia as general manager of media and marketing. And his most recent project was covering the Socceroos qualifying for the World Cup, which has just gone bananas on socials. So I know it might sound daunting, but it is incredible once you break through. Now, to give people a bit of motivation to keep persisting, we've got one last clip from Kelly Ryan. Kelly Ryan is the CEO of Netball Australia from episode 187. Just have a listen to how Kelly went about breaking through the door at the Western Bulldogs. In doing a bit of research, we found out that you started way back at the Western Bulldogs by just literally knocking down the door with, I think, 50 unanswered voice messages. How did your journey to Netball Australia begin?
I did. I literally harassed, potentially, the HR manager at the Western Bulldogs at the time, back in the early 2000s. So vastly different landscape to how it is today. And the persistence paid off because he literally succumbed to the pressure of my messages and agreed to meet with me. And I'll never forget those moments. There's moments in your career where you just can't forget. And the first thing he said to me, I think even before I even said hello, was, "We have no jobs here." I'm like, okay, that's fine, great. I'm here.
Great.
Yeah, no,
this
that
is
was a win to me, just to be stepping inside the four walls of the Bulldogs. And then lo and behold, before I left, I got offered too. So there were jobs there.
Amazing.
It's just a matter of having the will and the energy, I suppose, to not relent on what it is that you want to do. And then from there, it's literally, spent 15 years in the AFL industry trying all sorts of different experiences. And that was one thing that I really set my mind to, because I did decide probably about 10 years ago that I had this ambition of being a CEO. Naturally, probably assumed it would be in the AFL space in some way, shape or form. So just took every opportunity when something arose, whether or not it was really, clear in my skill set, just to grab it with both hands and have a go at it. So that led me from the Bulldogs into AFL House, doing some marketing activity there. Then I went to the Gold Coast and helped start the Gold Coast Suns. Back to the Bulldogs again for another stint across the premiership year in 2016 and also starting the women's team in 2017. Then into Marvel Stadium, and then from there to Netball Australia. So there's no career plan that I don't think actually has everything completely mapped. So you got to be prepared to just take some leaps of faith, make some big decisions along your way in terms of, does this move help me to get to my next move? The answer is, who really knows? But taking some risks along the way certainly pays off, I think.
I don't know if I could message a football club 50 times over and get rejected every single time and still be willing to get back up and message them again.
I'd be shot. Like I just couldn't do it. But it just shows how quality Kelly is for going that far.
Exactly.
Obviously
right.
Committed.
That's it. And that's what every one of these people have got. They're super committed to getting there. And I think, for anyone listening who is questioning whether they've got what it takes or whether there is opportunity out there that's worth it, these people were all regular people when they started out. They've just worked incredibly hard, and that can be you too. In terms of what's coming up, if you're in Australia, there is an incredible amount of opportunities in this country.
Yeah.
You've got the T20 World Cup, which is on our doorstep. You've got the FIBA Basketball Women's World Cup coming up as well. You've got the FIFA Women's World Cup coming up next year too. You've got Commonwealth Games, you've got Netball World Cups, you've got 2 Rugby World Cups, and then you've got the Olympics in Brisbane in 2032. And if you are half interested in the sports industry, you want to be a part of these moments because it is amazing. Both you and I know how good it is to be a part of the action. And so if you are looking for a bit of a barometer as to where you're at, do you have what it takes? Are you doing enough right now? One way to check in on yourself is just to stop, have a look around at your peers and ask yourself, am I doing the same, less, or more than the people around me? And that will be your answer as to what you need to do next. But keep going because there's an incredible amount of opportunity. There's some incredible examples in the last 100 episodes. I'd encourage you to go back through those episodes. We'll put links to all of them in our show notes if you want to check them out. But Follow those 8 principles and you should be in good stead.
You should get a job in sport without getting lucky.
That's it.
Awesome, mate. Well, 200 episodes. Geez, I'm still stunned. I can't believe we got here. I can believe it, but I wouldn't have said we'd get here after the first one. That was very funny. But a big thank you, obviously, to you, who right now we're coming through your ears, for listening in, because we absolutely love doing what we do, and we love the fact that you guys enjoy listening to us talk and sometimes ramble to each other. It's absolutely amazing. And we just hope that you get something from it and you're able to take what we're saying and maybe, it might be 5% of it, might be 100% of it, but something has helped you on your journey and your continuous journey in life or in sport. We absolutely love it. So thank you to the listeners. Thank you to our members as well. We're nearing 400 members in the SportsGrad community. Absolutely buzzing community. The support we get in there is amazing. That continues to come through on the podcast as well. Deakin, of course, as we said at the top of the episode, massive thank you to them. Sponsor the show. They've been with us since absolute day dot and continue to support us very, very closely. So we're super thankful to you. And, of course, our investors who allow us to do this full time. They've given us a massive support, both personally, financially, everything in between. They allow us to keep rolling and keep the podcast rolling, but all the other facets of SportsGrad continue to grow. So super thankful for all that, and everyone else who supports us as well. You might not listen every week. You might have listened to one episode, whoever it might be, on LinkedIn, socials, whatever. We're super thankful to all of you out there.
Beautiful. Well said. What should we do to celebrate?
Well, I don't know. Have a beverage, or we can go get lunch maybe.
Yeah, let's do that.
Yeah, we can go get lunch. There's some nice toasties around the corner.
Perfect.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, as per usual, we'll wrap up the show on a normal note. But thank you for tuning in. Connect with us on LinkedIn, plus be sure to jump into the SportsGrad community. You can visit our website at sportsgrad.com.au/community to join. Or, of course, connect with us on LinkedIn. We can give you all the information on there and in our show notes. If you do love the show, we would love for you to rate the show 5 stars wherever you listen to your podcasts. You can subscribe on Apple. No, you can rate on Apple and you subscribe on Spotify. I nearly got that right. But thank you. Give us 5 stars. We love all of you. Thanks again. We'll see you next time.